going to start with a beret that you know already fits you. And we're going to measure the head hole because that's honestly one of the most important parts. If it's too big, it'll fall off. If it's too small, it won't go on. So let's see. My head hole, that sounds very strange, is almost exactly 15 centimeters. So I'm going to start by tracing around the beret that I already have because it should roughly be about this size. It can be a little bit smaller down here where the heart-shaped tapers and a little bit bigger to enunciate this curved shape up here, but we don't want it to be drastically different from this. Now, a smart person would have done this with pencil and then traced over the final lines with pen, but alas. So now we want to fold this in half because I don't know about you, but I definitely cannot make a heart symmetrical. And then we can cut her out. That was pretty good. It's going to be a little close at the bottom, but because we're making a special hat pin later, I think it'll still be able to stay on the head. You don't actually need to have two pattern pieces for this. You can have one piece of felt that is just the outside part, and that will be like the top part of the hat, like this part. And then when you cut it out a second time, you'll cut it out with the outside line and with the head shape on the inside. Our original was 7.5. Let's make this one 6.5. Always better to overestimate how much you're gonna need and then trim it down later than to start sewing and realize that you cut it way too small. Or in this case, way too big. If you don't have a protractor handy, you can do the long method instead, where you take your measuring tape or your ruler and you measure, in my case, 6.5 centimeters away, make a dot, and then turn, make a dot, turn, make a dot, and then when you finish and you have a bunch of dots around the center point, you can just connect them and make a circle. So I'm going to cut this out, and I'll be right back. Alright, so here is my final pattern piece. It's not perfect, but wedding crafting is. So now I'm going to take my felt, this huge piece of felt right here, and I'm actually going to cut it out 4 times. So we need 4 pieces. 2 of just the outer rim, which will be the top part, and 2 of the outer rim with the center hole cut out. And the reason why I'm going to do that is I'm going to make a lining with this material. Now normally I think it'd be better to use a lighter material, but because this felt is only 1 millimeter thick, which is not as thick as I wanted, but I couldn't really find the color that I wanted and in the thickness that I wanted. So if you have the option, I would get a thicker felt than 1 millimeter, but you gotta work with what you got. Now I'm going to trace my second set of hearts, and this time I'll also trace the center head hole. So take one normal heart piece and one heart donut piece. Okay, so both of them you're gonna sew the same way. So around the outer seam, this way. And then again, this one around this way. And I'll check back in when that's finished. Okay, so now that we've trimmed and notched the edges up here, we can turn one of them inside out. Now this doesn't need to be perfect because we'll iron it and turn it the other way around later. So usually we need to put the right sides together to sew something. So in this case, it means taking the one with the seams on the inside and putting it inside the heart with the seams on the outside. So we can go ahead and take some pins and pin all the way around. Okay, wow, actually that looks kind of cool. Okay, so now that we have the entire head hole pinned all the way around, we're gonna take it back to our sewing machine, but we need to leave an opening so we can turn it right side out again. So I think I'm gonna leave about this much open, because actually since this material is pretty thick, it might be a little bit harder to fit it all the way through a smaller hole. So I'm gonna sew it around about this much, leaving about this much open, about 4 pins. And I'll be right back. All right, so now that we've finished sewing from here to about here, oh, it's time to turn it inside out. You should have something that looks kind of like this. Kind of looks like an old-fashioned king's hat, but no worries. Just take one of the sides and stuff it back inside. This is what it looks like from the top, and it will probably have a little bit of bunching here, but when we go with our iron, we can smooth some of that out. Now that all the openings are closed, we're going to give it one last round of stitching. So you can see that it's kind of bubbling over here, and while that's probably okay and you won't really notice when you're wearing it, it might look a little bit cleaner if we just put one round of top stitching around the top. All right, so I finished the edge stitching. You can tell how it looks a lot cleaner after finishing that. So now I'm gonna go ahead and iron it all the way around. And I'll see you with our finished look.